Well, it's been 3 months since the violent unrest in parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Today, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition Ebrahim Patel will prove and update on the support extended to firms affected by the unrest in parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal in July. He will be joined by officials from the Industrial Development Corporation and the National Empowerment Fund. Let's take you live to that.
And also to hear from some of the firms that have been affected by the destruction that we saw in July. Some of their own experiences in terms of what they've lost, but more importantly, the journey of rebuilding, recovering and reconstructing what has been lost in the process. And it is, of course, an opportunity for many of our colleagues in the media to also pose some questions around the package. And if they have any questions, both for the DFIs and the DTIC and also some of the beneficiaries, we will make ample opportunity for that as our discussion unfolds. So without any further delay, allow me at this point to hand over to the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Ebrahim Patel, to give us some opening remarks. He is our host this afternoon to give us some opening remarks and some reflections on the economic relief package and also, I guess, what we saw unfolding earlier on this year. Minister, the platform's yours.
Well, thank you very much, Ayabonga, and can I greet both the CEO of the IDC, TP Nchocho, as well as of the NEF, Pilisiwe Mtetwa. And I'd like to greet the acting DG of the department, Malibu Mapichi Thompson, and the CEOs of a number of firms who have been partners with the DTIC in this period, and members of the media. And perhaps in introducing this conversation we're having this afternoon, Ayabonga, I thought I should start with just contextualizing the actions that the department and the entities have taken. Members of the media and colleagues who are present will recall that the events in early July, in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, left in its wake enormous economic damage. Key infrastructure, commercial infrastructure in particular, was damaged, and the livelihoods of ordinary South Africans was deeply, deeply undermined. We had not only business owners staring ruin in the face, but many workers were left with premises that were burnt or looted. And in that context, we needed to move with some speed. So the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition has worked with other departments, but I really want to highlight just 6 or 7 areas that the department is focused on, and then talk specifically about the economic recovery financial package. So perhaps to start by saying, immediately as we saw the unrest unfolding, the department put together a communication line with businesses. We fielded enormous number of phone calls, and we had a hotline going, trying to link the police with hotspots where these challenges were taking place. We worked, secondly, to map out the damage to the supply chain, and we ran a survey in which we had well over 1,000 respondents giving us detail on the extent of damage that was caused in their businesses. And that helped us to identify the extent of the problem, but also where the most timely and appropriate interventions could be. Third, we worked with colleagues from the National Treasury to develop an economic stabilization support program focused on both manufacturing and retail, but also on critical infrastructure reconstruction. And that's what I'm going to mainly talk about, and I think will be the subject of all of our comments. So I'm going to come back to that. The fourth area that we focused on was to help get supply chains going again and address shortage of supplies. And this, in many cases, meant getting customers and suppliers working together, identifying alternative suppliers where a facility has been damaged. And we also put in place a duty-free import facility where local goods were not available. The fifth area was to have a coordinated response between firms In some cases, companies that were competitors and would normally not be allowed to talk to each other needed to work together, particularly in areas like food and other essential goods. And we enabled that through the exemptions from provisions of the Competition Act. The sixth focus was on working with stakeholders, trade unions and business organizations. I met with a number of investors. My department met with ambassadors from different countries, all trying to give the communication, the message of what we were doing, and ensuring that there is an understanding of the steps we will take, which helped to stabilize what was originally a deep concern that had been faced. And finally, we worked with different sectors of the economy, with the automobile sector, with clothing and textiles, sugar and others. Now, these 7 broad actions taken together has helped us to make some progress in the recovery and the reconstruction of businesses. And one key element that I had addressed the media a number of months ago was on the economic recovery package. We announced it towards the end of July. We used August to quickly set up our systems and operations. And these included webinars, physical visits to affected areas, both by the ministry, the 2 deputy ministers and myself, other cabinet members, but also retooling, particularly the NEF, to have teams in the field across the country. And based on those detailed site visits, we were able to encourage companies to put in applications for support. As of today, the IDC and NEF together, as part of the DTIC monies, has approved 1.5 billion rand in direct support in 123 separate transactions. Now, these transactions would be where a company or an association or an intermediary put forward an application for support. And so it's not just 123 sites. In fact, in a number of cases, it's more than one site that has been affected. One business owner may have a petrol station in 2 towns that were affected. Or we may have an association that has a number of members that they then support. So when we count the number of physical sites, buildings, if you like, that have been affected, where we've now rendered support, it amounts to 320 business sites. Those companies together employ about 13,800 workers, and that is the current approved transactions that are direct from our entities, and where we can see that the monies have gone to the final beneficiary or is going to the final beneficiary. But in addition to that, we've also worked with some associations and groups. And if I take the example of the sugar industry, we have received an application from sugar farmers whose cane in many cases were burnt and where they suffered other damages. And the IDC has now made available 85 million rand that will cover 192 sugar farmers in total. This is over and above the number that I've given you now of 1.5 billion rand in approvals. And the reason we count this separately is that this has now been approved, and we're now making sure that that money goes through the system up to the final beneficiary. As it gets to each final beneficiary, the small-scale farmer will aggregate it in our total numbers. Part of what we've done is to work in partnership. There's been important partnership with our agencies and SASRIA to make sure that SASRIA also works closely with us, that we enable information in our possession to reach SASRIA, and that we assist SASRIA to speed up claims. We've worked in partnership with the Solidarity Fund, the National Empowerment Fund, the NEF, received the support of 150 million rand from the Solidarity Fund, and I'm sure the CEO will have a word or two to say about that. We focused most of our support has gone to businesses in different parts of the economy, manufacturing businesses, retailers, food distributors and restaurants, petrol stations, funeral parlors, the range of activities, logistics companies, farmers and others. But we've also had another component where we're now working on rebuilding critical infrastructure. These could be public infrastructure like industrial parks, or it could be support for the big malls and so on that have been affected. Part of what we've attempted to do, Ayabonga, is to using the phrase that has been used by many countries elsewhere in the world in relation to COVID. It's to try to build back better. In other words, to see how the support can strengthen those businesses that have been affected, how we can get more sourcing from local industrialists, how we can bring local communities into providing services in the rebuilding effort, particularly bringing in young people. And that has been an important part, addressing this, ensuring that we reinstate the opportunity for livelihoods, that people can earn an income as entrepreneurs or as workers, but also to see where are the new opportunities. So one group, for example, have agreed that they will also now, as part of their support for this effort, they will increase the procurement of local sugar and local milk. And so in that way, we also deal with the hardships that have gone beyond the firms that have been directly affected to those value chains. So that represents the current take on where we are. And there are some really inspiring stories that I've heard from the department and the entities. And some of the places I have visited in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng, there was a real sense that you had South African businesses, you had consumers, you had foreign-owned businesses, all of them saying, what can we do to rebuild this economy? And the 1.5 billion rand in direct approvals that have already been made, in each case it took teams working often after hours, going through applications, checking them, identifying that the claims are valid, and then going through all the formal approval processes. There's been some important learnings for us. Our development finance institutions have had to become a lot more proactive, not only waiting for applications, but reaching out to businesses. Our systems have had to be more flexible. Instead of waiting for approval committees that may meet once a week or once a month, we've now mandated, I've asked the IDC, that the approval committees must meet daily. The minute we have an application that is ready, then a committee must consider it and look at it. And we've also tried to put in place measures to avoid double dipping and corruption, because one of the important issues is to ensure that we move swiftly, so we can't rely on all of the normal processes, but that we don't open an enormous gap for either fraudulent transactions or corruption. So can I perhaps pause there, Ayabonga, and say that it's really the stories of how this support is helping ordinary business people and workers that is the inspiring part of it. Over to you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, Minister. And we'll certainly come back as you had started to give us some sense there of some of the key learnings for the DFIs and also for the ministry arising from some of this work that's being done here. So let me now, give an opportunity to the development finance institutions who have been so central to the relief efforts. And we'll start off with the Industrial Development Corporation. The CEO of the IDC is with us this afternoon, TP Nchocho. And CEO, let's give over to you, and then thereafter we'll get some remarks from the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund, Mampilisiwe Mteto. CEO,
Thank you very much, Ayabonga, and good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon to the colleagues and the invited guests on the line and the colleagues as well, ladies and gentlemen. Just a brief comment in addition to what the Minister has said. I think I have a couple of observations to make. The first point to make was the appropriateness of the funding package. What we did was that we went to our board and we presented an argument and a submission to say, in situations like this where there is socio-economic reconstruction required, there is a need for money that is offered on a concessionary basis, and that is indeed supported by other instruments of support. That is why of the 1.5 billion rand that was set aside by the IDC, in addition to the other allocations from the DTIC, part of it was in debt form, carrying a 5% interest rate, and a portion thereof was in grant form so that we could deliver this assistance package on an appropriate blended finance basis. The second point to make, ladies and gentlemen, is the efficiency of execution. What we have learned across the world and where there have been situations, unfortunately, of conflict or unrest is that speed is of the essence in terms of getting help out to those who need it. So the efficiency at the IDC was basically underpinned by, one, having a dedicated team working on this. A group of people, approximately 20, were pulled out of their regular work to work on this particular project, and they continue to do so. Secondly, the assessment processes were streamlined, and indeed the third one, which is an important one, was that the decision-making dispensation was revised accordingly to enable us as the executives to move with speed. And process-wise, interactive, learn, improve as we go along kind of approach. So the efficiency of execution. The third thing that I would like to make is that important to have post-funding support associated with this effort in order to ensure the proper re-establishment of businesses and the continuity thereof. So again, we have set aside a dedicated team which, upon us funding an enterprise, they go in to assist with the reconstruction of the production processes, the well-being of the workers as they come back to work, the re-establishment of the supply chains, as well as ordinary financial management systems and so on, so that the businesses are reconstituted institutionally for long-term sustainability. I think the fourth point that is really important to re-emphasize was the collaboration between the stakeholders in this environment. In the government system, the cooperation we received from our colleagues at the DTIC, we are grateful for that. Of course, our colleagues at SASRIA, because there is an instrument where we are bridge financing some of the claims which will be received later on. So we provide the funding now as an organization, and we provide repayment holidays and so on. On the private sector side, working with the industry associations and industry bodies, various NGOs that are involved in enterprise development, we held hands together. Indeed, some of the big corporates, some of the businesses that were affected are under franchise models. So we would then work with the main corporate that undertakes the franchising system to arrange the funding as well as the post-funding support that is so required. Yes, lessons learned here really revolve around the importance of serving the need. I think our teams, as they went out, it was very important that we do not deliver a standard product, but we respond and adjust our funding and the terms thereof to the needs of these businesses as we went along. I already made reference to the importance of the internal synergies within the IDC, where the business development teams together with the business support teams that are in the middle office and the back office, we work in an integrated way in order to ensure that we achieve the kind of successes that we have achieved to date, where, as we speak today, 70% of the funding that we have approved, that the minister mentioned, actually has already been disbursed out. We have already in the pipeline at the moment just over 600 million rand of applications, new applications that we are busy processing now in due diligence phase. So a very cohesive operating system that we created in order to effect this intervention. In closing, Minister, I just want to thank the staff members of the IDC. They have demonstrated commitment in the execution of this task, and I hope and I'm confident that we will sustain the velocity of these efforts into the future. Thank you very much, Aya, and Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. Really appreciate those remarks. Let me hand over now, without any further delay, to the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund, Philisiwe Mthethwa. CEO, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ayabonga. Thank you, Minister, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists, investees present, and members of the media. At the outset, on behalf of the NEF, we wish to thank Minister Patel, the acting DG, the DTIC family, for having entrusted the NEF with the huge and important responsibility of serving as a partner in marshalling the country's response to support the recovery of the businesses that were affected in the civil unrest of July this year. The task, ladies and gentlemen, accords aptly and very well with the legislated mandate of the NEF, which is to grow Black economic participation in South Africa. Just to remind you that we actually do this by providing both financial and non-financial support. We start from 250,000 rands, and we actually go all the way up to 75 million rands. So I'm pleased to state that to enable the NEF's response to the crisis, the DTIC allocated a total of 650 million to the NEF so that we could come to the rescue of the businesses that were affected by the unrest. So in addition to the 650 million, we also got 100 million from our own balance sheet. And in addition to the 100 million and the 650 million, we also entered into a partnership with the Solidarity Fund, where the Solidarity Fund has now allocated an additional 150 million in grant funding to help the recovery of businesses that were harmed during the unrest. Just to touch on the qualification criteria. So we said the businesses that we're looking at have to be located in either KZN or in Gauteng. However, we do not exclude companies, for instance, that are involved in the logistics sector, where, for instance, a company, a logistics company could be moving goods from Mpumalanga or Limpopo from Cape Town to KZN to Gauteng. And along the way, you saw what happened in Moy River. Their trucks were actually damaged. So they have to actually prove to us that, yes, indeed, their property was damaged as a result of the unrest. And then all the other regulations would be like companies have to comply with all the relevant laws of the country. Obviously, they have to be in good standing with SARS, but we have also gone out of our way, to also try and assist our companies to regularize their businesses. So where, for instance, companies are not in good standing with SARS, we will not just simply walk away and say, we will not be in a position to assist you. We will handhold those companies. For instance, the minister is aware that when our teams were actually on the ground, physically on the ground, in the areas that were affected by the unrest. So we realized that, some of the financial information, the computers that the companies had been, utilizing before the unrest, all of that information was damaged. So we came up with a system of reconstructing the financial statements of these companies from scratch, where we have had to work with the commercial banks and the accountants of these companies just to make sure that when we present the transactions to the various committees of our board, that these companies will have all the information that is actually required. But most importantly, for us as the NEF, because we deal mostly with, the Black empowered or the Black owned companies, we offer a lot of non-financial support. So this is the work we've been doing over a long period of time. So we are familiar with the terrain where 70% of the companies that were damaged are actually coming from the townships and the rural areas. So because of the sector that we are dealing with, we've come up with a suite of non-financial support products. For instance, we have our post-investment division. So once we have invested the money that we're looking at, so we'll not just simply walk away. We'll make sure that these companies are handheld by our various colleagues, that we will also be in a position to provide continuous mentoring and advisory services once we would have invested the money. So out of the funds that were allocated to the National Empowerment Fund, I'm pleased to report that over 722 million rands has been approved across 125 sites that are owned by 73 businesses. I think the minister has already mentioned that we had to hit the ground running. We had to be agile so that we could then, make sure that we bring all of these companies back into full operation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, CEO of the IDC, Philisiwe Mthethwa, and would also encourage many of the colleagues from the media to share some of the comments or questions that they might have in the chat function, as Linda Enso has already done so. And we'll return to some of those questions in the next few minutes or so after we get some reflections from the beneficiary firms and also get some remarks from the Acting Director General in the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. So we'll now get an opportunity to hear from some of the firms themselves. And I guess this is a good opportunity to hear some of their own reflections on what unfolded in July, but more importantly, I guess, how the reconstruction efforts have unfolded since. And I want to maybe start off with some of the beneficiaries that have received support from the National Empowerment Fund. And we'll start off with a foods group that is based out in Gauteng, and it's 100% Black woman-owned foods group, and that is Win Foods. And I think we have on the line Katleho from the Win Foods group. Katleho Khoza, just briefly, if you could just share with us, I guess, some of the depth of what you lost in July, and more importantly, I guess, how the reconstruction efforts have unfolded since. Are you with us there, Katleho?
Hi, Ayabonga, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly so. Please go ahead.
Hi, so I am representing Wine Foods. We're based out in Wynberg. We're a poultry processing factory, but we also have a retail shop adjoined to our factory. And when the looting happened in July, our retail shop, which employs 10 people, was looted. First, they took the stock, and then more people came hours later in trucks and took all of our shop equipment. and the store has been closed ever since. We're hoping to open, we're actually planning to open as at the 1st of November with the help of the funds that we receive from the NEF. But outside of our retail shop, they also try to go into the actual factory where we do the processing. Fortunately, they couldn't get into the actual factory, but it's adjoined to a shell, and they destroyed our sort of like the engines for our fridges. So we use blast freezers and chilling freezers once the chicken's been processed, and they destroyed those coils, which are extremely expensive. And we had to close down the factory for a period of about 2.5 weeks. This affected, now in total we employ 70 people, but at that point it was 60 people who were out of work for a period of 2.5 weeks. We applied for funding, very rigorous process, but we were well supported. Our officer was Mpumezo Matibe, who was really, really great because it's quite a detailed process. And we've been very fortunate. The funds were dispersed. We've been able to do a number of things with the funds. So as I've mentioned, the shop will be opening again as of the 1st. We were able to retain those 10 employees that work in the shop. We absorbed them into the factory environment once we started operating again. We've been able to acquire a generator, which has been much needed with the ongoing load. Customers also looted, either shut down or haven't been able to open up until now. So we were also left with a lot of bad debt. So we've got customers that still haven't paid us, but also customers that are no longer operational because of the looting. But the support and the funding has really, really helped us. And I think even long term, it will help us to become a sustainable business. We've been able to employ another 10 people because we now have increased our capacity, not only to service clients with the current orders, but clients that walk in and want orders. Because of the increased capacity, we're able to have more chicken available as opposed to in the past where we were only producing 4 orders. So thank you to the NEF.
Thank you very much for that message, Katlego. And it's always, heartwarming to hear, notwithstanding all of the horrific scenes we saw in July, that you've been able since to add 10 new jobs. And I think that's something that certainly would warm the hearts of many on the call. And thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us, Katlego. And I'm sure many of our colleagues who are joining us from the media might have more specific follow-up questions, and we'll certainly, facilitate that where necessary and relevant. The next business we want to take a look at is Nguni Group. They are a 100% Black youth and Black woman-owned entity, and also in the food, beverage services and textile sector. Wendy Makafela is the representative of Nguni Group, and I just want to see whether or not Wendy is registered as Wendy on the call, and whether or not, she might have maybe logged in with a different name or the name of the company. So let's maybe just get some word on that particular one. Is Wendy with us on the line?
No, Wendy is not on the line. She's not online.
Okay, all right. So we'll come back to the Nguni Group. Let's get Nomfundo Mtoyi, who is in a sector where I guess all of us at some stage will be customers of this particular sector. That's the burial industry. And she is the operator of Icebo Lethu. And Wendy, Nomfundo, let's hear from you, and let's see if we can allow you some capability to talk there. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I would like to greet the Minister, Mr. Patel, IDC CEO, Mr. Njosho, and NEF CEO, Mrs. Pilisiwe Mthethwa, and everyone present in this group. Firstly, I just want to say July was a very bad month in all businesses in KZN. Our offices were looted. Amongst those looted were 24. Amongst the 24, 3 of them were burnt down. It was such a very, very bad experience for our business. Our business was started in 2009 from Hammersdale with just 1 branch, and now 12 years later, we are more than 120 branches across the whole KZN province, and we've just started in Johannesburg as well. And seeing how we've worked hard to build a business that has employed more than 1,500 people, and through our foundation, we've been helping communities in all these, through all our offices and all our other projects that we do through the foundation, to see the looting, the very same people we're helping, the very same people where we are employing the family members and looting our branches, breaking down, burning down everything, taking caskets, carrying food with caskets, taking caskets into the streets. It was such a very, very bad experience. I wouldn't wish it for anybody. We've always respected death, but seeing what happened in July, it was so disrespectful to our community as well at large. So yes, looting happened, and later we lost a lot. But NEF came through. They really helped us. I don't want to lie. The funds, it was a bit of a process to get approval, but Nomfundo Fagutse was very, very helpful. She held us with her hand, with my MD. They worked hard to make sure that all documentation was proper and the application went through. So we are very, very grateful to NEF. They approved the funds. We started fixing our offices. We have received half of the funds, 50% of the funds, because some of the malls are still down where we have offices. So we can't commence with repairs of those offices. So those that have been restored, the staff is there working. We are able to service our clients. And fortunately for us, we closed all the 24 offices due to looting, but we did not retrench even a single member of our staff. They're all working. Due to these funds that NEF assisted us with, we're able to keep them employed. And slowly we are opening offices and they're going back to those offices. We just reshuffled the staff and reallocated them to other jobs, to other parts of the company, so that they can get employment, they can stay employed and get salaries at the end of the month. But NEF has been very, very helpful to us as a brand. We will see all 24 offices opened, even better than before, because we are like redoing them even better than, they're going to be even better than they were before. And we'll be seeing more employment coming through, with us having renovated those offices. So we are very, very grateful for the funds. We really, really appreciate what NEF has done. And also, I would just appeal to NEF to just say there's more that were damaged, whose offices were damaged during the looting, maybe even in the industry that I'm in the funeral industry. But maybe they might not have the documentation properly as Icebolethu, but I don't know how can those other companies be assisted in order for them to qualify for these funds, because we want them to come back and still be running their offices and offering the services that we offer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Nomfundo. Really, really appreciate that you could share with us some of your experiences with the NEF, but also, I guess, some of your reflections and feedback on the support that you have received from the National Empowerment Fund. and also, I guess, the impact that has had on your own operations as well. So thank you very much for that. And we'll go to the next business, which is Izwelethu. And I understand Busisiwe Dube is the representative from Izwelethu. So Busisiwe, let's give you an opportunity to make some remarks and also just to share some of your own reflections and experiences in the rebuilding process. So Busisiwe, I see as Busisiwe Butelezi, so I don't know if that's the same.
Busisiwe Dube. Greetings. Yes, greetings to the minister, the board, and the chair, and the CEO, and the participants and the management. I'm a small to medium-sized business in Umlazi. It was a butchery that started in 1974 by my father. It was based in Umlazi, then he expanded to Istenga as well. So we were supplying fresh meat to the local and the rest of KZN. It's a retail shop and the wholesale shop where I distribute meat to your stockfields, your shisanyama around the area, and also deliver to the automobile sector and the catering sector. Though we're not looted, but I was affected because my cold storage was packed. I had to close for about 2 to 3 weeks because of the power outages. So I was severely affected. My cold storage packed up, and also I had stock losses. Every week, my cold storage is full of meat, so I lost quite a lot on those 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Also, I employ about 32 people that were out of work for about 2.5 weeks. I'm grateful to NAF. They came in and they supported me during this time. Though I haven't received my funding, I'm going to get my funding, but I'm happy that they supported the business. So the cash flow was severely affected during that time. I'm still, recouping from the cash flow problems that happened during July. So I just hope when I get the funding, it's going to help me to ease the cash flow problems that I had. So I would like to thank the NEF team that has come aboard to assist us during this time. And it's been an eye-opener in terms of compliance. Now we know exactly which statutory documents that are supposed to be in place, so that we ensure that we pay our duties and the government sustainable. So I'm grateful to NAF and the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us there, and we certainly wish you much of the best, I guess.
All right, we're going to come out of that briefing